12 spine-chilling sugar daddy tales, exposed secrets of a haunted luxury lifestyle. Jenna's heart raced as she scrolled through the forum, the glow of her laptop illuminating the darkened room. Desperation slithered into her thoughts. This wasn't just a chance, it felt like her lifeline. She had hit rock bottom with bills piled high and her 7-year-old son, Eli, humming innocently in the next room. But the promise of sparkling evenings, designer bags, and weekends away from their dreary life pulled her deeper into the whirlpool of shimmering fantasies. But with each click, unease crept up her spine. After hours of browsing profiles filled with extravagant pictures and sweet promises, she stumbled across Victor. His captivating smile and smooth words sparked something inside her, a dangerous hope. They agreed to meet at a posh cafe, where the atmosphere buzzed with the clink of glasses and soft laughter. Victor handed her an extravagant bracelet, its diamonds reflecting the cafe's golden lights, and for a fleeting moment, Jenna felt like a queen. But that glow faded too quickly. Shadows flashed outside her window that night, breaking the stillness, sending chills racing through her. The whispers became too loud to ignore, like distant, haunted echoes resonating deep within her walls. Weeks went by. The more wealthy patrons she saw Victor with, the more the noises intensified. Sudden thuds against her door, the scuttling of unseen creatures in the night. Familiar faces in her neighborhood began to change. Whispers bounced between neighbors, fear radiating from their eyes as they hastily glanced her way. The community of Maplewood, once so inviting, now felt like a trap. None of it felt right. Women disappearing, another news alert claimed, last seen with a man like Victor. Panic clawed at Jenna's throat, drowning her in dread. Had she been naive, believing it was all just a chance for a better life? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. She shoved the notification from her mind and decided to confront Victor. He met her with a tight smile that felt more like a threat, his charming demeanor now marred by dark undertones. Every word was a carefully chosen dagger, piercing through her resolve. The rush in her chest quickened, believing the truths hidden beneath laughter and luxury. Each encounter became a balancing act of fear and intrigue, an intoxicating cocktail she couldn't ignore. As the shadows thickened, Jenna began her clandestine mission to gather evidence. But resistance from locals left her feeling more isolated. Fear reigned in Maplewood, forcefully masking the truth lurking in plain sight. She felt the walls closing in, suffocating her dreams of escape. Gathering her belongings, she noticed the distant glint of a street lamp, a beacon of salvation in this nightmare. Yet, just as hope began igniting a fierce courage within her, icy dread froze her in place when the door swung open. With Victor standing on her threshold, the visage of the man she once believed was a rescuer morphed into a threat, his smile sharp enough to cut and eyes swirling with unspoken menace. "I've been looking for you, Jenna." The words slithered from his lips, filling the room with a tension so thick it was palpable. How far would she go to protect her son? She felt the answer slipping away as darkness enveloped her home, leaving her to wonder if it was already too late. The atmosphere crackled around Jenna as Victor stepped into her home, the air heavy with his sinister presence. Panic gripped her heart, yet a desperate part of her clung to the thought that she might still have a chance to save herself and Eli. The room seemed to close in, walls adorned with shadows reaching out as if trying to snatch her away. Victor's gaze lingered too long on her. "Where did you think you could go?" he asked, his voice velvet but cold. An icy tremor coursed through Jenna, her spine chilled by the way his eyes glinted with something far more dangerous than charm. "I just wanted to talk," she stammered, every word a precarious balancing act on the edge of fear. She couldn't let him sense her panic. Not now that he stepped forward, the soft thud of his polished shoes echoing in the silence that followed. You've been asking too many questions, he said, leaning in closer. You're unwelcome in a world you don't understand. Jenna swallowed hard, wrestling with the primal urge to flee as he loomed larger, invading her space. What do you want from me? The words were barely a whisper, fragile and trembling. Victor laughed, but it did not carry joy. It felt like a cold gust of wind in a graveyard. You think there's a choice? Women like you want luxury, but with luxury comes a price. You've crossed into a place where your questions can get you hurt. She could hear Eli in the next room, his innocent hum oblivious to the horror unfolding just beyond the door. Panic surged within her. A wave of motherhood pulsed fiercely, urging her to protect him at all costs. You leave my son out of this, she whispered fiercely, her skin prickling with fear. But he's the perfect little pawn, isn't he? Victor's voice shifted, turning dark and serpentine. Children can become so useful. Images of the news report flashed across her mind, the faces of the women who had vanished. The sudden awareness that she was swimming in the deep end of a dangerous game locked her into a moment of clarity. She needed to act, and fast. With a frantic pulse, Jenna turned and darted toward the narrow hallway leading to Eli. Stay in your room, baby, please. She called over her shoulder, her voice breaking as she feigned confidence. Victor's laugh rang out behind her, icy fingers of dread tracing her spine as she reached for the door handle. But a cold grip clamped around her wrist, pulling her back. In that instant, doubt seeped in. What if she could not protect her son after all? The voices grew louder, shrill with urgency as she fought to break free from Victor's iron hold. Let me go. Her scream erupted as raw desperation filled the space. He yanked her back, his grip like a vice. You don't need to make this harder, he urged, a predatory gleam in his eyes. You're already in too deep. Let us not cause a scene. Besides, he leaned in closer, a menacing smile forming. The fun is just beginning. In that moment, fear clawed at her throat, and the world spun her home now a fever dream of shadows and terror. The doors of safety slammed shut around her, and hope slipped through her fingers like sand. Desperation fueled Jenna. She had to get Eli out. If she could just reach him, but what chance did she have against a man who wore charm like armor? What could she do to outwit a predator lurking in the guise of her savior? Victor's laughter echoed through the darkness as Jenna grappled with the grim reality closing in like a noose. And just then, a loud crash shook the room, a shattering glass from beyond the window. She froze, dread pooling in her gut as she realized the nightmare was far from over. Who or what had just broken into her haven? The window shattered with a deafening crash, scattering glass across the room like sparkles from a broken dream. Panic surged within Jenna as she glanced toward Victor, whose expression twisted with rage and curiosity. He released her wrist, spinning on his heel, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. What was that? Jenna whispered, her throat dry as cotton. Her heart hammered like a drum in her chest, echoing the frenetic panic in her mind. Stay here. Victor snapped, his voice suddenly commanding, an edge of wildness creeping into his tone that she had never heard before. She had no intention of complying, no plan to be his obedient puppet. Eli needed her. Every maternal instinct pushed her toward the hallway, but terror rooted her to the spot. If she moved, how would Victor react? Victor slipped toward the window, slipping out of her sight as he investigated the source of the noise. Jenna took that split second to summon courage, breathing deeply, the air thick with fear. Eli. Her voice rang out, stronger now. She took a step toward the hallway, hoping to sprint the few feet to her son's room, and then a shadow pranced across the light from outside, flickering like a candle's flame. Jenna ducked back, heart racing, as icy fingers of dread crept up her spine. The world outside, usually a mundane dance of suburban calm, now felt alive with suspense. Shut up. Victor's voice spat from the window, and Jenna felt a chill creep over her. What or who could be out there? Thud. Thud. Her blood ran cold. The sound was rhythmic, deliberate. Something was moving toward her house. She glided silently toward the hallway, hugging the wall, the jagged bits of glass crunching underfoot. Eli, her baby, was a precious heart beating in the darkness beyond the door. She had to reach him, had to protect him from Victor's twisted ideas. Jenna peeked into the dim light of the hallway. The door to Eli's room remained closed, a sacred sanctuary in a world turned upside down. Her heart pounded as she approached, but just before she reached for the knob, she spotted a dark silhouette looming behind her in the living room. Victor was coming back. "Mommy?" came the small voice from behind the door, pure and innocent. "Eli." Jenna responded as she turned instinctively, but Victor stood too close now, blocking her path, his smile wicked and feral. "There's no need to shout," he purred, eyes glinting with malice. "Why don't we play a little game?" The mere suggestion sent nauseating waves through her body, a sickening mixture of fear and adrenaline. "Let him go," she demanded, forcing the words past her lips through the knot of terror. "He's just a child. He doesn't belong in this." Victor leaned closer, invading her space again. "Nothing belongs to anyone in this world, Jenna." "But children," he paused, rolling the word around as if savoring it. "Children are the most interesting pieces on the board." Before she could process his words, Victor glanced back toward the window, a look of impatience flaring in his eyes. "Enough of this interruption," he muttered, getting ready to bolt back to his investigation. Acting on instinct, Jenna seized the moment. She dashed toward Eli's room, gripping the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. "Eli!" she cried, shaking the handle. Panic crested, drowning out everything else. "Open the door. Mommy!" His frightened voice was thick with anxiety. Her heart cracked open as she heard him. She fought against the door, pulling desperately, feeling it was tied with chains she couldn't see. Suddenly, she heard a voice behind her, deeper and more sinister. "You really don't want to do that?" Jenna froze, a shiver traveling down her spine. The air grew heavy, suffocating, as she felt the shadows close in. A new fear gripped her. What if the true horror had yet to reveal itself? Something metallic glinted in Victor's hand as he stepped closer, eyes locked on her and Eli's door. Something telling her the escape she craved was slipping away, what was lurking just outside, and who was hiding under the surface of Victor's chilling facade. Jenna's heart raced as Victor moved closer, the glint of metal reflecting the dim light, slicing through the tension like a knife. She could barely breathe, the air thick with dread. "What do you want?" she dared to ask, her voice trembling in her throat. Victor's lips twisted into a grin, but there was nothing benign about it. "I want to play, remember?" He lifted the object in his hand, revealing a blade, a sickly shine that made her stomach churn. Fear clawed at her insides, but she could not back down. "You stay away from Eli." She became aware of the shadows flickering around them, warping into grotesque shapes on the walls. Victor chuckled, a low growl that sent a fresh wave of nausea crashing over her. "You don't get to decide what happens, Jenna. Not anymore." With a quick flick of his wrist, he pointed the knife toward the door. "Let us see how long your resolve lasts." His voice dripped with sadistic anticipation, and in that moment, she knew she had to act. Eli was depending on her. "Eli!" she screamed, pounding on the door with desperate vigor. "I'm right here. I won't let him hurt you." Each thud echoed with the weight of her panic, reverberating in the silence around them. Victor sneered, such determination. But that won't change a thing. Suddenly, the thudding outside grew louder and more powerful. It was relentless and unsettling. She turned back toward the window, half expecting to see whatever monstrous thing was stalking her home come crashing through. But Victor's presence loomed larger, his grin widening with each emotional wave crashing over her. "Don't you hear it?" she whispered, voice thick with dread. Victor's eyes sparkled with delight, but Jenna could see the flicker of annoyance. "It's your mind playing tricks," he said, stepping forward with calculated ease, the knife glinting ominously in his hand. "Or perhaps it's the thrill of our little game. Maybe I should teach you how to lose." She could not let him toy with her. In a split-second choice, she turned back towards Eli's door. Eli, listen to me. You need to stay quiet. Do you understand? Mommy, I'm scared. Eli replied, his innocent voice weaving through the chaos, tugging at Jenna's heartstrings. At that moment, something heavy slammed against the front of the house, jarring Jenna from her thoughts. Victor's gaze snapped toward the sound, a flicker of concern breaking through his arrogance. What the hell was that? Jenna froze, adrenaline surging through her veins. This was her chance. Eli, don't, she started to say, before dashing toward the window where Victor had been standing only to find him completely unbothered by her movements, eyes glued to the door. Something was happening outside, something that seemed to distract the monster before her. She wondered if it was the end of her twisted game or just the beginning. The sound of rattling echoes pierced through the stillness. With each new thud, her heart pounded harder. Whatever was out there wanted in as desperately as she wanted out. Victor turned back, a flicker of irritation still evident. I guess we'll have to wrap this up before our guest arrives, he drawled, his voice drumming with a dark promise. With every second, the walls felt like they were closing in around her, the air thickening painfully, as if the room itself were a living entity. Please, just let him go, Jenna begged, desperation spilling from her lips. Victor's smile widened, sinister and triumphant. I can't make that promise. Not yet. The windows vibrated violently as an unknown force slammed against them. Darkness loomed beyond the breakage, chaos waiting just outside the threshold. What if I told you the game has a prize? He whispered, voice laced with malice, his eyes glinting. Jenna's pulse raced as she braced herself for what might come next. The knock grew more aggressive, and with it, the sinister realization sank in, whatever was out there might be worse than Victor himself, what was waiting just beyond that door. And was Eli even safe behind it? With the sound of shattering glass ringing in her ears, she felt the night close in. Around her every shadow a potential nightmare, every breath a desperate plea for survival. But she had to know the truth lurking outside, before it was too late. The wind howled outside, a mournful wail that seeped into the cracks of the house. Jenna stood frozen, a prisoner in her own skin, as Victor continued to gaze intently at the door, now rattling incessantly. His expression shifted, excitement twisting into something darkly anticipatory. Do you feel that? He asked, voice smooth like honey gone sour. Something's coming. A primal fear burrowed into Jenna's core. She had to remind herself that the greatest threat wasn't always lurking outside, sometimes it was right in front of you. Victor was that threat. He thrived on chaos, and she could see it swirling in his eyes like a tempest. Eli. She called out again, her voice cracking, teeth gritted against the suffocating horror. I'm going to get you out. Just hold on. Mommy. Eli's voice shrieked, a thin thread woven through the thick shadows. Every frantic note tugged at Jenna's heart, spurring her into motion. She glanced toward the window, jagged pieces of glass sparkled like shards of ice scattered across the floor. Then, the door shuddered again, heavy and wild. Jenna felt her stomach twist. Something outside was desperate to get in, its urgency echoing her own need to escape. Enough of this. Victor snapped, a wicked grin stretching across his face. He took a step towards the door, knife glistening in his hand, excitement palpable. Let us see who it is. Jenna's instincts screamed at her, urging her not to let him control the situation. She lunged for Eli's door, fists pounding against the solid wood. I'll get you out. Just hold on. Mommy, I'm scared. Eli's small voice was shaky, full of innocence and fear. It shattered Jenna's heart. Victor laughed, low and dark. Time to play a different game, Jenna. You wouldn't want to miss the arrival of our guest. With all the strength she could muster, she pushed against Eli's door. It wouldn't budge. Anguish pulsed through her as she realized Eli was trapped, helpless against whatever might come in. The knocking became frantic, each strike louder than the last. Something was clawing at the door, desperate for entry, as if sensing the chaos within. "Let us see what happens when fear takes hold," Victor taunted, retreating slightly to give the door the space to shake violently. "I have a feeling you'll learn just how dark this night can be." Then, as if in response to Victor's words, the door splintered. A crack formed, wide enough for a gray hand to creep through. With every heartbeat, Jenna felt the world condense into that singular moment. The fear that had been building exploded into raw terror. "No! Stay away!" she screamed, backing away instinctively, the knife now forgotten in Victor's hand. The hand pulled, dragging something unseen toward the threshold. The door shuddered again, on the brink of giving way. Jenna could hardly breathe. The shadows in the room twisted and morphed, and in that chaos, she felt the oppressive darkness creeping closer. "Mommy!" Eli's voice rang out again, a tiny beacon amidst the rising dread. "Stay away!" Victor shouted, his eyes darting between the door and Jenna. "I'll decide who gets to play with you." A sliver of determination pierced through her fear. She had to keep Eli safe. She turned to the window, contemplating her options. Escape was murky, there was no clear path. Victor lunged, but she sidestepped him, rattling the shadows behind her. Whatever was outside was getting closer, eager for a taste. "Get ready, Jenna," Victor growled. All hell's about to break loose. Heart pounding, she knew she needed to act fast. The echoes from outside became deafening. Whatever thundered at the door had a hunger, a thirst for chaos that just might consume them all. Would the door hold? What horror waited on the other side? The darkness thickened around her, the shadows whispering promises of despair, and suddenly everything went quiet. But silence is often the loudest scream of all. What awaited in that stillness? The silence lingered, dense and impenetrable. Jenna felt the weight of it as if the air itself had turned to stone. She held her breath, her heart racing, anticipating the next sound, the next nightmare waiting to unfold. Victor's expression faltered, confusion replaced his eager grin, an almost childlike uncertainty warring against the chaos in his mind. "What?" he began, but before he could finish, the door creaked, a long, mournful groan that resonated through the room. The gray hand retreated momentarily, as if tasting the air before diving back into the fray. Shadows danced in the flickering light, amplifying the terror that held them captive. Jenna darted to the window. She was half tempted to throw herself through it, shards of glass glinting like an inviting grave, but she recalled Eli's cries. No. She needed to stay focused. Eli needed her. "Eli!" she shouted, desperation spilling from her lips. "I'm coming. Just breathe." The silence clawed at her, but just as she thought she would drown in it, a shattering noise erupted from the door, a loud, splintering crack that sent a shiver down her spine. The hand pushed through the opening, dragging the door further ajar. Something dark loomed behind it, the outline of a figure growing larger, more defined. Victor stepped back, his bravado fading as the truth unfolded before him. His grin vanished, replaced by wide eyes reflecting horror. "What the hell is that?" he whispered, dread slicing through his bravado. "I don't know." Jenna shouted, but instinctively she knew it meant to harm. "We need to go. Now." But the door was falling apart at an alarming rate, each splinter an invitation to whatever was beyond. Raw panic surged through her. Her feet moved instinctively toward the door, but her sanity urged caution. What waited beyond was unknown, dark, terrifying in its promise. "Stay away from it." Victor's voice splintered through her thoughts. "I'll handle this." He lunged at the door, knife drawn, but the figure surged closer, blocking the entrance. Jenna felt the force of it, an almost magnetic pull. What was feeding the darkness? What laid beyond the threshold? With a growl of defiance, Victor swung his knife at the figure. Metal clinked against something solid, followed by a cacophony of horrifying sounds, a deep, guttural growl mixed with the sound of nails scraping against wood. It reverberated through their bones. Jenna's breath hitched. Victor stumbled back, eyes wide with terror. It doesn't bleed. He spat, staggering as he stumbled back, fear finally clawing at his facade. Eli! Jenna screamed again, feeling her sanity teetering. I'm coming for you, I swear. But with every word, time seemed to distort. Seconds elongated into infinity, the grasping darkness coiling tighter around her. She grabbed a chair, thinking to use it as a barrier, anything to shield herself. Suddenly, Eli's terrified cries pierced through the chaos. Mommy! Please! The sound ignited something fierce inside her. Jenna turned to Victor, her eyes blazing with determination. You've got to help me. We're not letting him whatever that is take him. The atmosphere in the room shifted, tension crackling like static. Victor's eyes darted from her to the door, calculating, weighing his options. Fine. He hissed, throwing her a glance that felt like fragile glass. But remember you asked for this. With renewed energy, they moved toward the door together. The shadows seemed to writhe, heat pressing against their skin, suffocating them. And then the figure surged forward, a shadowy mass bursting free from the doorway. In that moment, everything changed. Jenna saw it, a glimpse of rancid skin stretched over crooked bones, predatory eyes glinting in the dim light. A nightmarish grin stretched across its face, revealing jagged teeth dripping with malice. Run! Jenna screamed, terror propelling her feet forward, but the shadow slithered closer, whispering promises of despair as Eli's cries echoed like a death knell. Would they manage to escape the nightmare that unfolded? Or had the darkness finally taken hold of their fates? As the door burst open with a thunderous crash, shadows spilled in, and Jenna's world darkened anew. The shadows flooded the room, an unholy tide of darkness that swallowed everything in its path. Jenna felt the coldness grip her like a vice, constricting around her throat as she struggled to breathe. The air was thick with a foul stench, a rusted, iron scent that clawed at her senses. Eli! She screamed again, her voice breaking. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet her legs felt heavy, glued to the floor by fear. As the figure lurched into full view, its grotesque features twisted her stomach. It had no discernible shape, just a collection of hate and rage rendered into something monstrous. Victor's wide eyes reflected Jenna's horror, his knife trembling in hand. What do we do? His voice cracked, a thin thread stretched to breaking. We fight. Jenna shouted, suddenly fueled by adrenaline. They might not have the strength of numbers, but they had each other. She took a step forward, brandishing the chair as a makeshift weapon. The figure snarled, its ghastly grin widening impossibly as it moved toward them. Get back! Victor yelled, lunging with the knife. He thrust it deep into the creature's chest. It howled, a sound so raw and primal that it sent Jenna reeling back, covering her ears to drown out the nightmare. But the creature wasn't bleeding, its form twisted and contorted, responding not to pain but with a hunger for more. Run! Jenna screamed, and the room shifted. Walls warped, shadows bleeding into each other, causing a dizzying array of darkness that made her mind spin. They had to reach Eli. There was no choice. Suddenly, the cries of her son pierced the air again, raw and desperate. It was a sound that ripped through the chaos, grounding Jenna in a primal urgency. This way! She shouted, darting toward the archway, her heart pounding in sync with each step. Victor hesitated, still gripped by terror. What if it follows us? He gasped, eyes darting back to the figure that writhed in the shadows. We don't have a choice. She grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the horror. The air shifted again, the smell of decay engulfing them. They ducked through the archway into a narrow corridor. Jenna's heart hammered against her chest, a frantic drummer demanding action. The corridor seemed endless, stretching farther than it had a right to. Eli's cries echoed, closer now, urging them forward. Mommy! A mix of hope and dread laced through her veins. If she could just reach him, the walls creaked and groaned, the darkness unfurling behind them. She could feel the presence of the creature closing in, a palpable sense of malevolence that sent shivers racing down her spine. Victor stumbled, barely keeping up, fear etched into every line of his face. "What is that thing?" he muttered, glancing back as they moved. "Does it matter?" Jenna shot back, her voice edged with panic. "We have to keep going." But as the cries of Eli grew more frantic, the shadows around them thickened. The darkness swelled like a living entity, coiling tighter, pressing against their skin. Without warning, the floor beneath her feet began to tremble. Cracks appeared, spiderwebbing outward, and Jenna realized the very foundation of this space was shifting. Time stretched, and within an instant, an overwhelming force erupted from the shadows, a violent wave that sent her crashing to the floor. "Jenna!" Victor shouted, reaching for her. But something pulled him backward, dragging him toward the darkness, his scream swallowed into the void. "No! Victor!" She clawed her way back to him, but the shadows clawed at her, enveloping her legs. They pulled at her, whispering words in a language she couldn't comprehend. Panic consumed her, each heartbeat echoing in her skull. "Eli!" She screamed again, desperation mingling with her terror. This wasn't how it ended, she would not let him go. Searching, trying to find her balance in the chaos, Jenna felt the cold creeper hands tighten around her. The darkness threatened to pull her under, but in her heart, a single thought blazed: she had to save him. The creature would devour everything she loved if she didn't act. "Come on, Jenna!" She urged herself, forcing her body up. But it was too late. The shadows, hungry and insatiable, surged around her, and she realized she had to face whatever lay beyond. The truth was waiting, lurking in the depths of darkness. As her vision blurred, and the cries of Eli seemed to fade into silence, one chilling thought cemented itself in her mind: could she confront the beast and survive whatever horrors it held? The light dimmed, but ahead, a faint glimmer flickered. Was it more than just a trick of the mind? Determination surged within her. She would fight, or she would die trying. Jenna's heart raced faster than ever as the shadows tried to swallow her whole. The dim light ahead flickered, a beacon in the dark, whispering promises of hope or perhaps deceit. She strained against the grip of the darkness wrapping around her, determined to reach her son. "Eli, hold on!" she cried, her voice a fierce declaration. She pushed through the suffocating dread, each step a battle. But the shadows heaved and writhed, eager to claim her. They snickered, faint voices echoing through the corridor, their words indistinguishable but filled with malice. Jenna's pulse quickened. If Victor had fallen to this terror, she couldn't bear to think the same fate awaited her and Eli. As she stumbled forward, she felt the ground shift underneath her. A tremor stirred through the floor, and debris rained down in a cascade of dust. The corridor twisted, the walls pulsating like a living organism, each breath a struggle as the very air turned thick with despair. In the distance, Eli's voice grew clearer, his cries echoing through the chaos. "Mommy! Mommy!" Desperation choked Jenna, propelling her deeper down the hall. This part of the house felt wrong. It creaked and groaned as if alive, a beast ready to consume her. The lights flickered above like the last gasps of a dying breath. "Eli!" she cried again, sinking into panic as the realization dawned: the creature wasn't just chasing her, it wanted her son. Their bond was its target. "Please, just let me find him," she begged into the dark, tears streaming down her cheeks. Then, she spotted a door at the end of the hall. It was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the oppressive twilight like a siren's call. Without thinking, she rushed toward it, barreling through the doorway, expecting vindication. What she found instead snatched her breath away. The room was a shrine to nightmares. Walls adorned with photographs of children, smiling faces frozen in time, eyes wide with joy, yet something darker lurked behind them. It was as if the photographs watched her, judging and accusing. Eli! She yelled, searching every corner. But all she found was silence. Then she noticed a figure in the corner, a childlike silhouette. Mommy! The voice was faint, trembling with fear. Relief washed over her, and she lunged toward it, her heart lifting, but the figure dissolved into smoke, revealing shadows dancing just beyond her. Jenna screamed, spinning around, all the joy evaporating like mist. No, no! She gasped, dread pooling into her stomach. The shadows began to close in again, heavier this time, and Jenna felt the walls closing around her, each heartbeat a countdown. Eli! She stumbled backward, desperate. And that S when she heard it, the creature's low growl vibrating through the floor, deep and guttural, sending vibrations curling through her bones. With renewed panic, she turned and ran, darting back to the hallway. Yet something was wrong. The corridor felt longer with each step. Shadows loomed, a cacophony of whispers surrounding her, filling her ears with the secrets of the lost. Do you really think you can save him? A voice slithered through the air, wrapping around her like a vice. He belongs to us now. No. She howled, stumbling. Her world pitched and spun, logic giving way to raw instinct. She couldn't afford to think, she had to act. Jenna pushed through the oppressive darkness, desperation becoming her only guide. But just as she thought she spotted an exit, her foot caught in a thickening shadow, pulling her down. She fell to her knees, every instinct screaming to rise. Ahead, the faint light flickered again like a dying star. Eli's voice hovered just beyond. With sudden strength, she gripped the ground, forcing herself forward, determined to pierce the tightening hold of shadows. And then she saw it, a dead end. A wall, blank and suffocating, marked by claw marks that seemed to writhe. Panic curled in her gut, a heavy realization crashing over her. The shadows danced around her, a chorus of laughter echoing, chilling her to the core. She was trapped, nowhere to go but the darkness. Mommy! Eli's voice cut through the gloom, a lifeline of pure terror. Could she really lose him? The fear became unbearable, pressing against her chest. She turned, and behind her, the shadows hissed, closing in a terrifying promise of what awaited her. No. This couldn't be the end. But what lay beyond the shadows, beckoning her into its depths? Was the light too far to reach? Jenna steeled herself. One way or another, she would face whatever lurked there. And with Eli's cries bold in her ears, she prepared to confront the beast once more. Would she find her son, or would the darkness swallow them whole? Jenna sank to her knees, breathless and trembling. The shadows writhed around her, hungry tendrils snaking closer, wrapping around her ankles like chains. Eli's voice echoed still, each cry a painful reminder of what was at stake. Fear gripped her heart even tighter. Mommy! His voice cracked through the darkness, faint yet piercing. It stirred something inside her, a flicker of hope igniting her resolve. She couldn't allow fear to overwhelm her, not now. With a guttural cry, she tore herself from the ground, the shadows resisting but not strong enough to hold her for long. Every step felt like a fight. The air thickened, stinging her throat. She pushed ahead, hands outstretched toward the flickering light that beckoned like a distant star. Each terrified whisper surrounded her, murmurs of despair mingling with her racing heartbeat. Then the coldness hit her. It was palpable, a wave crashing over her, sending shivers shooting down her spine. It felt alive, hungry. It made her bones ache with dread. She fought against the waves of icy fear, refusing to succumb to the darkness. The walls pulsed, breathing with a rhythmic, ominous heartbeat. Jenna pressed on, seeking the source of Eli's voice, but no matter how fast she ran, she remained wedged in the dead corridor, its oppressive gloom smothering any sense of direction. She felt a sickening twist in her stomach. Was she losing her mind? Eli! Her voice trembled, a whisper against the enveloping darkness. Barely audible, she heard it again, the soft whimper, the call of a child in trouble, fighting against despair. The sound ignited something primal within her, sharper than any fear she faced. "Where are you? Mommy, help me." The voice felt alive, breaking through the blackness like a knife. Jenna knew that if she didn't find him soon, something unspeakable would happen. She approached the wall, drawn by that desperate voice's haunting tenderness. The shadows screamed back at her, shriller than before, an echoing laughter that sent chills cascading down her spine. Jenna slammed her palm against the surface, feeling it warm and pulsing, a heartbeat of its own. "Let him go!" she screamed, every fiber of her being vibrating with fury. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if surprised by her defiance. They blurred around her, darting back only to rush in again, harder, as if testing her resolve. In the shifting chaos, an image flashed before her, a vision of Eli, his face blurred but unmistakable. The warmth of his love pierced through the veil. She gasped, realizing the shadows lured her with illusions, fragments of memories twisted to bind her will. "There has to be a way." Panic edged her words. "Show me." At that moment, an apparition flickered into view. A child in shadows, but this one was no figment, it was solid, eyes brimming with sorrow. Eli's features emerged briefly, a flash before morphing back into a grinning mask of terror. "Mommy, please." The figure called, stretching toward her. "I'm scared, Eli." Panic surged, suffocating. Shadows clutched at her ankles, but she fought against their pull. She could feel them trying to drag her down, whispering promises of fate, but she was not ready to surrender. "Eli." She lunged forward, breaking through the remaining distance, desperate to reach him. The walls trembled, a furious rumble rippling, and at that moment, she knew the thing that lurked within the darkness was seething with anger. "I'm coming." But just as she surged forward, the ground convulsed violently, cracking beneath her feet. The light flickered, dimming, and the guttural growl of the creature rumbled louder than before, shaking the very structure around her. As shadows coiled around her like serpents, Jenna's heart raced with a mix of terror and resolve. She thought of Eli, of the bond they shared, and pushed against the ominous pull. "Let me find him." And suddenly, the floor beneath her gave way. Jenna plummeted into a void, spiraling downward into a darkness deeper than the abyss. Her screams echoed, merging with the malevolent laughter of the shadows that had once felt so tempting. But then she felt it, his small hand gripping hers tightly. "Mommy." Could they escape the nightmare together, or was this darkness their final resting place? As she plummeted deeper, a single thought blazed fiercely in her mind: no matter what, she would not abandon her son. The darkness enveloped Jenna and Eli, a whirlpool of despair threatening to pull them apart in its suffocating grasp. But then, amidst the chaos, Jenna felt Eli's hand clutching hers, grounding her in the maelstrom of shadows. Panic surged, but so did a fierce determination. "Hold on tight, baby," she cried, squeezing his hand. "We're getting out of here." With a primal scream, she fought against the darkness swirling around them. Memories flashed in her mind: him riding his bike, laughter spilling from his lips, the sweet innocence of his childhood. Those images ignited a fire within her, a spark of hope piercing through the suffocating despair. "We have to believe we can do this." Just as she uttered those words, an unfamiliar warmth enveloped them, radiating from their clasped hands. It was as if their love was a light that could cut through the thick darkness. The shadows shrieked, recoiling from their unity. Suddenly, the void shifted. A thin line of light pierced through the swirling shadows ahead, a doorway shimmering like a beacon in a storm. "That way!" Jenna shouted, pulling Eli closer to her. Every ounce of strength surged through her as she propelled them toward the light. The dark wails of the shadows echoed behind them, angry and desperate to reclaim their prey. As they dashed toward the light, the shadows thrashed angrily, clawing at Jenna's ankles. She stumbled but gritted her teeth, refusing to let go of Eli's hand. "We can do this. Just a little further." Their feet pounded against the ground, a rhythm of hope and desperation. The light grew brighter, growing clearer with each step, washing away the oppressive darkness that had threatened to consume them. With a final burst of energy, Jenna and Eli hurled themselves through the threshold of light, bursting free from the darkness into a world filled with color and warmth. They landed on soft grass, the sun spilling golden rays over them. Breathless, they lay there for a moment, feeling the warmth of the ground beneath them, a stark contrast to the chill of the shadows that pursued them. Eli scrambled to sit up, eyes wide with a mix of fear and triumph. "Mommy! Are we safe?" His small voice trembled with uncertainty. "Yes, sweetie, we're safe." Tears of relief streamed down her face as she hugged him tightly. They were together, intact, free from the clutches of darkness. They had escaped. But as everything settled, Jenna felt a strange slip in her mind. Victor. His presence lingered, a ghost haunting the edges of her thoughts, a reminder of the price of their escape. She glanced around, suddenly aware of the world around them. They were back at their home, the sun shining bright and cheerful, juxtaposed against the horrors they had just faced. The moment was short-lived, however, as her instincts flared again. A day would come when Victor might return, or worse, what if the shadows still lingered? She looked down at Eli, whose bright eyes still sparkled with innocence. She drew in a shaky breath. They needed to move, and fast. "We have to go somewhere safe," she declared, pulling Eli to his feet. "Somewhere we can make a plan." They slipped away, leaving their haunted house behind. Jenna held Eli's hand firmly. No longer could she afford to be a prisoner of fear. This was their chance to reclaim their lives, to protect all they held dear. As they ran, she promised herself that she would learn from this nightmare, shield Eli from its echoes, and keep them both strong and safe. The streets of Maplewood were blessedly quiet as they ventured forth, unknowingly escaping a fate that loomed just beyond the veil of shadows. Overhead, the sun shone brilliantly. They would face the world anew, armed with their shared bond and the knowledge that no darkness could extinguish their love. For the first time in a long while, Jenna felt the weight lift from her shoulders. Freedom was theirs once again. And as they disappeared into the embrace of a vibrant future, she knew love could illuminate even the darkest corners of their lives, and with that thought, they ventured forward, ready to face whatever came next. If you loved this thrilling conclusion, you need to subscribe now to the channel so you won't miss exclusive stories. Smash that like button too, to feed the algorithm and keep the adrenaline flowing. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. Let's get the conversations going. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything, and true fans understand how powerful this moment is.